This is the DRF Players Podcast.
What's going on? It is Friday, May 22nd. It's the DRF Players Podcast alongside Peter Thomas Fornatale, the DRF tournament editor, and Michael Hogan, the man behind at DRF Formulator. I'm Matt Bernier. FYI, we're trying something new.
Right,
Pete
we're not alongside.
Well,
Peter
we
Thomas
can
Fornatale.
see we can see Peter Thomas Fornatale. We can
That's
see
true.
Pete. Pete, how are you?
It's like that thing when you're listening to the game in the car, and they say you're going from left to right on your radio dial. In that sense, I'm alongside, but really I'm in my office in Brooklyn with a decidedly more hi-fi setup than when we tried this last week. But hopefully this is going to work out because I plan on spending most of my summer up in the haven known as Saratoga, but I don't want to miss out on the fun.
No, and it makes it easier. My concern always was when we were going to do this sort of remote thing, and obviously it's not ideal for you because you can't see us, but we can see you. Right. So we know when you're speaking and when you're not.
I think this will get to a point where there's got to be a way where I can see you, I think. And in fact, for a second there, subliminally, I saw you guys. But we'll get it. Our top tech team will get this sorted out, I'm sure. In the meantime, at least we have this.
Hogan, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I like the races this week. There's some interesting ones.
We've got 4 good ones. We're going to dive right into it because we're on a tight time frame. 4 races, publichandicapper.com. If you're not involved, get in and play. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. The only thing you need to pay for is the NHC Tour membership. There's 4 races every weekend, and it's still early on in the contest. The first one is going to be the Nassau from Woodbine. It's a 1-turn mile. It is for fillies and mares 3-year-olds and up. They're going on the grass. Big field. Wide open race, I think. Pete, let's start with you because you are the foreigner as far as this room is concerned. Where'd you go?
I was taking a look just from a trip point of view, and this one, call me crazy, but I was taking a look at number 11, Resistivity here. There is a dearth of early speed in this race, and this filly has some talent. She set the pace in a very hot-paced Ashland last year. She's come back from that where she blew up and ended up, beating a city block, but has come back twice in 2015 and run pretty well. She's got tactical speed. She's got a trainer who owns the joint in Mark Cassie. I was thinking maybe on trip here, it's not the classiest group I've ever seen in a Group 2, in a Grade 2. I was going to try to get something done. I don't think we'll see 20-1, but I'm hoping we can get a pretty big price and have a chance at a clean trip in the Nassau.
Yeah, Resistivity is good. Oh, look at this. Now we've got a split screen. We can see you and we can see ourselves.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah.
Resistivity, I think she's good. I don't think she should be 20-1 on the morning line. I think that's kind of a joke.
The morning line's a little odd in this race, I'd say.
I mean, when you got a 90 buyer staring you in the face, there's no way this horse is going to go off 20.
Mark Cassie at Woodbine. He's got 2 20-1 horses.
I think you're going to get half that. Look, she could work out a trip. I fear, and Mike, I don't know about you, I fear what she beat in that race down in Florida. I didn't think that field, it's come back kind of weak.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you say you don't think that there's much early pace because I was actually seeing it completely the other way. I was seeing Resistivity going. I was seeing Copper Kitten on the stretch out going to be forwardly placed. Skylander Girl is always at or near the lead. I actually thought that there was quite a bit of early pace in this race. So I don't know. We'll see.
No, I agree. I think there's a lot. Go ahead.
Those were the only 3 that I saw, and I wasn't that worried about Skylander Girl wiring them. Was hoping she was more synth, and off the stretch out, I was sort of hoping maybe Copper Kitten would be a little more reserved and stalky. I was just envisioning a very good trip, not necessarily has to be benefited by a super duper favorable flow, but just clean from the outside. That was more along the lines of what I was thinking.
Fair enough.
Mike, where'd you go?
So I went one further out from you, Pete. I went with number 12, Winning Rhythm. Again, morning line, I'm expecting to get a little more than the 6-1. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's based on the class of the last 2 and the grade 2 stakes. But, this is one figure-wise is going to need to improve. and maybe at Woodbine, the morning line maker is figuring those Southern California races are going to take some attention, and she'll take some money. But part of the reason why, there's a couple of reasons why I really like her. The biggest reason is that last race, which, Pete, I know you're a trip handicapper, and I know you love Flo. Did you watch that? Did you watch that race? And Matt, I know you've watched it.
I was at Santa Anita for that race, in fact, and had the winner, Hoop of Color, and there was absolutely no pace for Winning Rhythm to run into. Not there, not the race before, and not 3 back either. No,
and I looked. I actually have. I use the trip notes as well. I know you guys use them a lot more than I do, but when I get a trip note for a horse, it means that I went out of my way to actually put a note in there, because I do it maybe once or twice a week. So it's rare that I have unique trip notes for horses. I had a trip note for Winning Rhythm in that race. Huge middle move. Continued on late. I think she ran the best race. You can see it in the running line, where she was 9th and 8th by 9 lengths, and then 4th by a length and a half. When you go to the chart and you change to the incremental pace, she ran 26.50 for the first quarter, 24.59 for the second, 22.91 for the third, and still continued on willingly down the lane. It was a huge race at a big price in that one. If she can run anything like that, like you said, I don't think this is the saltiest of fields. I think she can fire a big race if she's ready here, and I don't see why she wouldn't in the first start for Cititard.
I look at this, and I mean, I've been married to Winning Rhythm for a long time. But look, there's something that has to be said for the fact that she runs the same race time and time again. Sometimes it's good enough, sometimes it's not.
Right.
I also looked at it and think that, I think this field is just as good as what she was facing in Southern California. I don't think that there is such a huge discrepancy in the ability of these runners compared to what she's faced. Diversity Harbor, obviously, unfortunate situation there. A Fantacola or Bling is my thing. Rusty Slipper, 3 Hearts. I mean,
well, you're not mentioning
that good.
But you're not mentioning Rosalind, who won the Sheepshead Bay last next start out. She finished ahead of her. She finished ahead of Testa Rossi, who's a nice filly. She finished ahead of Queen of the Sand, who came back to win the Santa Barbara.
It's obviously a live race. I don't think those horses are that much better than these horses. I think it's a very comparable move, and everyone's going to just assume that she was facing better in Southern California. I don't agree with that. I think this field is just as good as what she's faced in Southern California. That's my only piece with it. And then the other part is a one-turn mile. Look, that's a bizarre thing for some of these horses. I don't know if she's going to want to do it. And at 6, the thought of 6 is a little bit too light for me. Yeah. I was blown away by the 4-1 morning line on the number 3 Overheard. And I think it's just because they're looking back at the past running lines, how this one is run. I thought that last race at Keeneland, she ran like a short horse. I think she needed that. That was over soft going. She was just kind of flat down the lane. She's the second of the 2 Malcolm Pierce horses in here. We've got to talk about the Septivision. She's coming out of the double dog down there at Keeneland over the dirt. She really does nothing wrong, but her price is going to be horrid in this spot. 4-1 on Overheard seems very short for me. I'm hopeful to get something closer to 6, 7, or 8. Unfortunately, I'm not going to know by the time you got to put your picks in for Public Handicapper. This is a race that I think it could go any number of ways, but right now I'm leaning toward the 3 Overheard. Pete, any thoughts on our plays?
No, I mean, I think there's some interesting points, both pro and con, on Winning Rhythm, and I think, as always, you're going to have to let the tote decide. If I'm wrong about the pace and you guys seem to think there's going to be more pace than I do, that would definitely upgrade Winning Rhythm. I'm with you on Overheard's morning line being short, and maybe I gave her a little bit of short shrift as a result of that, which is always a mistake and such a difficult thing to do when we're looking at these morning lines. Sometimes it's so hard not to take them kind of literally, but I want to go back in and do a little bit more work on this race. It's probably, of the 4 that we're looking at tomorrow, the one that I spent the least time on, and honestly, there's probably plenty more tape work to do here with horses coming in from all over the place.
Quick gut check question for you, Pete. Who do you think goes favored?
Who's favored in this race? Probably Stellar Path was my guess.
You think? Yeah, Deceptive Vision is the favorite on the morning line, 3-1. Stellar Path 7-2. I can see that. I think they're both going to be pretty close in price, and I think they'll probably be both lower than their morning lines.
Yeah, it's hard to know how they're going to bet sometimes in a big full field like this, where you could see them coming for winning rhythm, or you could see them having a horse like Resistivity. It's a great race to make a value line for, and then just let that be your guide. It's actually a pretty tough race for a contest like Public Handicapper, where, as Matt pointed out, it's like the all-in contest we run sometimes on our sites, also known as Pick and Praise, where you have to put all those picks in beforehand, and you're essentially making a guess at what the crowd is going to do. That makes me very frustrated. I don't like just to pick. I like to pick relative to a price that I know is real. Sometimes it doesn't matter. A race like this, very tricky.
Right.
The second Public Handicapper race of the weekend is the 11th at Monmouth Park. It's the Majestic Light $75,000 non-graded event, going 1.70 on the main. 11 horses going to the post, scheduled anyways. Morning line favorite is the number 2 Valid at 7-2. I got to be honest, this is a horse that I am not the slightest bit afraid of at this point, just strictly because he just refuses to change leads now. He had never done that in the past, and when he showed up in the Harlan's Holiday, he should have beaten Liam's Map had he changed leads. Ever since then, he hasn't been able to do it. At a short number, I'm not afraid of him, but then again, keep in mind, this is Monmouth Park, and we've seen time and time again that it can be an absolute conveyor belt. So let's hope we get a reasonably fair track tomorrow afternoon. Pete, where did you land in this race?
Well, I'll start off just by sort of seconding your assessment of Valid. Such a tough, cool horse, but to me, just vibes like one who needs a break. That said, I'm not going to be a hero. I would probably still use as a B based on what you were saying about Monmouth Park and the potential for it to be a conveyor belt. While there is other speed in here, certainly think he projects to be the speed of the speed. More of a B for me. I've got 2 A's in the race. The one that I'm leaning towards putting on top in Public Handicapper, who I think has a shot to work out a good trip despite the potentially tricky post, is number 10, Super Lucky. Last time he tried Tonalist, and when I say tried Tonalist, I don't just mean was in the same race as Tonalist. I mean tried Tonalist during the running of the race. Obviously got the doors blown off there, but reappears in a much more realistic spot. I think will be pretty close to a pace where I'm hoping that Valid, who's maybe not what he used to be, hooks up with a horse perhaps like Integrity and sets it up for a horse like Super Lucky to have a great maybe 2-deep pocket type trip and get the job done for an underrated trainer in Michael Trombetta.
Mike, what do you got?
I see it similar to you guys as far as I think Valid is a horse that, especially as a favorite, I'm happy to play against because in addition to what you guys have said, I also think he's probably better one turn. Even though he has won at Monmouth going 2 turns, that was a year ago. And I think he's a better one-turn horse at this point in his career. And I think that there's going to be other early paces. In addition to Integrity, I think number 8, Cousin Steven, is probably going to be pretty forwardly placed as well. And I didn't pick Cousin Steven, but I got a formulator fact for you. Pete, how do you like this one? Chad Brown, last 2 years, dirt routes outside of New York with Kendrick Carmouche aboard, 17 for 30.
Wow.
17 for 30. ROI is relatively low because a lot of those were favorites. 313 ROI, still pretty good. 17 for 30, Kendrick Carmouche. Note, Kendrick Carmouche also rode Super Lucky last out. Chose Cousin Steven. I don't know if that means anything. Trevor McCarthy's a fine jockey and had ridden him in the past. So, I wouldn't be too concerned if I were you. Personally, for me, I went with a horse that I've talked about, if not on the podcast, at least to you guys individually. That's number 9, Red Vine. He was a horse who started on his career. First 13 races were on the turf. He was entered for a turf race back in December at Aqueduct. It got rained off, and lo and behold, they found out he liked dirt. He's 2 for 2 now on the dirt. Looked good in both races, beat a very nice field last out and beating Kid Cruz and 3 Alarm Fire. I think he could be As far as dirt runners go, maybe the one we haven't seen the best from yet in this field. And I think he's going to set, despite the outside post, I think he's going to get a very good trip stalking those early leaders, and hopefully will pounce on them around the turn.
This is a race that I think there's a lot of speed in here. I think a lot of horses are going to go. Super Lucky for me, on paper, I mean, he obviously figures. He's got that 102, 3 back, you get popped to 110. Super Lucky seems to be the kind of horse that continuously works out wide trips. And that bothers the hell out of me. And there's nothing that I can really do about that in this spot. You've got a reasonably short run into the first turn. He's breaking from the far outside. Not the far outside, but the 10 post. I'm afraid that he's going to get hung wide again and not have an ideal trip. I look at some of these other ones. Storm and Monarcho's a cool horse, but you know what? From the outside, he's probably going to need to go. Red Vine has every right to win. Maybe he's just wanted dirt all along. That being said, I think he's going to be a bit of you're going to see Bravo and Clement. I think he's going to be a short number. Cousin Steven, I'm not terrified of him. I know that number that Mike just brought up is really good. I'm not afraid of him. Integrity off the claim for Jacobson has got to be a live player. And Valid, we talked about. I'm going to give you a bomb. A bomb. Bombs away.
I like it.
Longest shot on the board, number 5, Lucky Lotto. Abel Castellano, Edward Barker. You look at this horse, he's coming out of the same race that Wealth to Me is coming out of. Keep in mind, Carmouche is named on both Wealth to Me and Cousin Steven. Factor that in when you're going through the race. We'll wait and see who he actually ends up going with. Lucky Lotto lost, or ran third, I should say, to Wealth to Me, who ran second behind Bay of Plenty. The difference was Wealth to Me was getting very short at the end of that race, and the gallop out was horrific. He drifted out very badly. Lucky Lotto was a horse that was late with the lead change, and then the fact that he kicked on very late, he was making up quite a bit of ground. The gallop out was beautiful. I think he's going to relish going 2 turns. If you look at his Aqueduct races, I know there was a 12-5 claimer and a 32 claimer. The inner track races going 2 turns, it seems to be that's what he really wants to do. He's going to get back to going 2 turns. There's a ton of speed in here. He's going to be able to sit just off, hopefully get first run on some of these horses like Old Time Hockey and, whether it is a Wealth to Me or an Edge of Reality. I think Dan brought it up when I talked about this horse on the preview. This is a horse that I don't think he wanted any part of these races up in Canada on the synth or on grass or any of that kind of stuff. You get him on dirt, he's turned into a decent animal. His numbers aren't far off, and I think people are going to look at it and say, nothing good with the connections. 7-year-old gelding, he's got no shot. He's probably going to go north of 20-1. This is one that I'm 100% playing in the race. Number 5, Lucky Lotto. He could be completely overmatched. Pete, am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. We talked about race flows before, and Lucky Lotto was definitely against the flow of that race as well. And I love using race flow in conjunction with notes like the good note you have on the gallop out there. It just kind of shows to me when they finish up full of run like that maybe they weren't able to do all their best work during the race. Maybe it just didn't set up in such a way where he was able to fully show his best. I agree with you. There's plenty of pace in here. I could see Cousin Steven just getting hooked up with the other 2 obvious speeds, Valid and Integrity, and setting it up for something crazy. I also want to mention about Red Vine. Mike didn't say exactly what he had said about him before. It's kind of a hilarious thing that I wish we talked about it on the pod, but I don't think we did. When we were talking about the Great Cigar passing, Mike just made the comment that it would be as if a horse like Red Vine went on the dirt and won 15 races in a row.
Hey, who knows? Maybe this is the beginning of that whole thing.
Well, we'll see.
It happened twice since.
Yeah, right, with Lee. Yeah, how about that? I think it's an interesting race, and we'll see how the wagering plays out. We have 2 races. Go ahead.
One quick note. You mentioned Wealth to Me had Kendrick Carmouche listed as the jockey.
Yes, who do we have?
That might have been early. It's now Andre Worry.
Andre, don't worry.
Don't worry,
me worry. Andre,
don't
what
worry.
me worry.
The final 2 PH races of the weekend are both at Santa Anita as part of their Cal Gold Rush card. The 6th is the Franz Valentine, 3:15 Pacific post time, 6:15 Eastern. A mile, fillies and mares, 4-year-old and up, on the grass. Pete, where'd you wind up in this one?
I wanted to try to find a little bit of a price. I had just enough questions on the favorites. I ended up down at the rail with number 1, My Monet, who's improved mightily for the new barn. The turf is obviously a little bit of a question here. The last appearances on the green stuff, not so super impressive, but who knows? As much as she's improved for the new barn, with the tactical speed, with the good draw, based on the breeding, I mean, she's only tried the turf 3 times. 2 of those were sprinting. The other time was stuck in a speed duel. Maybe she can run on the green. Maybe people are going to dismiss her out of hand. And I just didn't really know where else to go in here, so I ended up on My Monet.
I got some trainer stats for you. Did you look at trainer Ricky Aguirre?
I did not do the deep dive on Mr. Aguirre. What did you come up with?
So he seems to be a relatively new trainer. He's had 30 starters, and they've all been within the past year, I believe. He's 5 for 30. Total ROI for all runners is $5.42. His 2 wins on the turf came at 27-1 and 41-1 with Salsita. I'm sure you remember her.
Oh yes.
So this is a trainer that can pop at a big price, and I mean, you're right. This horse has really improved as soon as he got a hold of her. So I noted her. I didn't pick her, but I like where you're going with that one.
Yeah, she also has that angle that Matt, I know, likes of the paired up buyer figures sometimes leading to another forward move. That would be the other angle I just mentioned on her.
My only concern before we go to Mike, Pete, did you watch that last race?
I did not watch the tape on the dirt race.
She looked like she was drunk down the lane. She was all over, drifting in and out. She changed back leads, back and forth. That was my only concern. I know we're cutting back, but with the other speed in here, that was the reason that I went aside. But you're right, she's got the paired up buyers, and it'll be interesting to see if she ends up running and from the rail.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I will go and check out that tape. Hopefully the surface switch, the small cutback, can do the trick to cure whatever was making that goofy behavior happen. She is only 4, even though she's well raced. It bothers me less in a situation like this where you're getting a switch than, say, with a horse like Firing Line when they're being goofy with their lead changes when they should theoretically be peaking. Those are ones I'm willing to bet against. This is a situation where my inclination is to be a little more forgiving.
Mike, where'd you go?
So I love this race partly because I am way against the horses that are the 2 choices on the morning line. Go West Marie is a very nice horse who is done very little wrong on the turf, but I think she is better at the 6.5 furlong distance or sprinting. Even though she's won at a mile, I'm not sure that's her best distance, and at a short price that she's likely to be, I'm against her. The other one I'm against is Wild in the Saddle. Turf has certainly not been her best game. Maybe she's just had to get better now as a 6-year-old. But going back to that surface, I don't want her at a short price either. And so I landed on, and some of it's going to come down to price. Some of it's going to come down to scratches and race flow. If the race stays together and we have the speed that I think we're going to have, I landed on number 5, Chati's on Top. Is a horse who seems to need some pace. The last 2 races, I watched both of them. Even though she didn't win by much in either, she was by far the best in both races. She was wide last out. She was wide both turns in the mile race that she won. She's one that I think is improving now as a 4-year-old and is ready to tackle stakes company. So she's the one I would go with. The other one I liked a little bit is number 7, Mangita, for Bruce Headley, who's certainly carefully spaced her races and strangely enough seems to have found the best fit with jockey Aaron Greider, and she will be a relatively decent price in here.
Has he carefully picked those races, or was that spacing deliberate, or has she had a lot of problems? I mean, that's a lot of layoff lines.
Right. Well, I don't know, but aside from aside from the dirt race, which is probably not her right surface, and the race where Kieran Fallon rode her where she was never a factor, she always fires. So despite the layoff, I gotta put my faith in Headley here that if he thinks she's ready to run, she seems to be working relatively okay, and if he thinks she's ready and I'm going to get a good price, I might take a stab with her.
I don't blame you there. I mean, you look at her and you see that she's got, a little bit of ability in the past, and she can sit a little bit. I love a horse in this race. This is the one that I'm dropping the hammer live money tomorrow. Obviously, I'm going to use her in PH. Odds, I don't think I'm going to get the morning line, the 5-1 on the number 4 Heat du Jour. I think she'll probably be 3-1 when it's all said and done. That's fine with me. That last race is going to look like a disaster. That was nothing more than a prep. She's not a dirt horse. No. Second off the bench for Hollendorfer. I think she's ready to go. Nakatani stays aboard. You look and see who she ran against down at Del Mar over the summer. That start in August, she beat Kiona by 3. She beat Kathleen Rose, who's a decent one. She also beat a horse in that race called Warren's Veneta, who's come back to be a Grade 1 winner. And I know it was on a different surface, but it just goes to show that this one's got ability. If she runs that race, if you go back and watch it, she will not lose if she runs that race. Now, it's a big question if, but if she does, everyone else is running for second. I firmly believe that. The yellow ribbon, there's nothing wrong running 5th behind Miss Serendipity, Paranda, Cozy Up Lady. There's a couple other good ones that were in that race. We're going to draw a line through the one in October. Something must have gone wrong. She comes back. Hollendorfer over the past 5 years, turf, sprint to route, non-graded stakes for Calbreds. 4 for 9 with a 284 ROI. 2 of the 4 victories came in this exact race. I think Heat du Jour, for me, is just an absolute. I'm licking my chops. I hope this field stays intact.
I like her. I got a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, you go first.
Okay. My question is she better at Del Mar? On the Del Mar?
Entirely possible.
Because I like her quite a bit too. My concern was partly the price. I agree that April start was strictly just to get a race in her. She didn't want to sprint. She doesn't want to go on the dirt. I'm just afraid that people might be thinking the same way as me with Go West Marie and Wild in the Saddle, and your 5-1 is more like 3-1, which for if you feel as strongly as you do, that might be an okay price, or for multis, that's certainly a fine price if you've got opinions in other legs. But for public handicapper, I needed a little bit more of a price, which is why I'm likely to go with one of the other ones.
No, the 3-1 for me is fine for live and for contest. I think and look, she may just love Del Mar, but I really think that those couple races that she ran, keep in mind, those were also really her first big efforts after she went into Hollendorfer's barn. I just think that there's much more there, and I love that Nakatani stays aboard. Pete, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, as great as these connections are, Nakatani on the turf in California, Hollendorfer generally, they've both been pretty darn icy since the start of this meet. And being out there last weekend, saw several live-looking Hollendorfers not run a step. Could completely be randomness, but sometimes I try to get ahead of these things, and that was the sort of one thing that gave me pause here. Am I just worrying too much?
No. I mean, I think you've always got to factor in if you think that connections are off and their runners just aren't firing. I still look at it and just say I have faith in, it'd be one thing for me if it was certain other trainers in certain other jurisdictions. Hollendorfer in California, he's going to be, so he's a little bit of a dry spell. Maybe he breaks out in a big way tomorrow afternoon.
Sometimes good hitters go through slumps.
That's how I'm looking at it.
And maybe it just helps your price.
Look, I would love that if that's the case. I don't know if it will actually happen or not, but I mean, I would love to hopefully find out. The last race that we're going to go over is if I can pull it up on my lovely little laptop.
It's the Snow Chief.
It's the Snow Chief. It's the 8th at Santa. We're going a mile and an eighth on the grass for 3-year-olds. I personally hate this race. I have nothing interesting to say about it. I tentatively, hesitantly picked Zinvor, the number 4. I'm not going to pick him in PH. I'm not betting this race. I hate it. The only one that's mildly intriguing to me is the 11 over par. Other than that, take it away, boys. I have nothing to say about this race.
The maiden. The 0 for 3. Never hit the board maiden.
Yeah,
I love it.
But this race is just throw a dart. I have no idea.
Is Zinvor named after that guy whose pictures you see in the subway? You know what I'm talking about? Dr. Z, fix your skin with Dr. Z or whatever.
Maybe. How about that? He's got a horse named after him. In California, no less.
California, a Calbred.
Speaking of horses being named after people, well, and also in a fake way like Zivnor, I did see your horse, Matt, last week when I was out there. What's going on with her?
She lacks a little bit of ability. Let's put it that way. I root for her every single time, and she's starting to get that vibe of a career maiden.
New connection.
You know what I really want? I want them to put her on the grass. Try her on the grass. At this point, what do you have to lose?
Yeah, the best race for Bernier, the female horse, was definitely the first race, right? I mean, she's never really run back to that, so it's probably time to
her first was her best.
Yeah.
But the same can't be said for you, my friend. So
thank you. That's very sweet of you.
Continue to come on for the run here, providing us good stuff on DRF Live and on the DRF Players Pod. For me, the horse here is a pedigree/trainer play. Oh, gosh, if you could lock in morning line prices, how nice would that be? Because this one I can't imagine is going to be anywhere near his morning line of 6-1. I kind of like number 9, Rocco's Wheel. Plenty of pedigree in here for the first time on the turf. The dirt numbers are the fastest in the race. And Phil D'Amato, just tremendous with surface switches. Great eye for turf horses. Learned from his mentor, Mike Mitchell. And I think this one's going to be very live. In real life, it might be tricky if he gets down to the 5-2. I'm guessing he'll be maybe even shorter. But for public handicapper purposes, I'm just going to put Rocco's Wheel on top and try to mess around with the other legs. Maybe Mike has something clever for me to put underneath.
No, sadly, Pete, you're blocking me yet again.
Same
I also went with Rocco's Wheel. Last out. Looked great. The race came back okay. Went way wide, and it was wide on the first turn as well. Was by far the best horse in that field. You're right. From a pedigree standpoint, the Dam was a very nice turf router. I'm surprised it's taken this long to try him on the turf. D'Amato may have actually been involved in the training of the Dam because she was trained by Mike Mitchell.
Almost definitely then.
Yeah, so I think he knows what he's doing with this one, and you didn't mention it in terms of the surface switches, but I did the dirty work. D'Amato 4 for 9, 537 ROI past 5 years, going dirt to turf in Santa Anita routes. So I think this one's live. I'm a little worried about the price as well. I don't think we'll be as low as 5-2. I think Grazing Sky is going to take money. I had a stat on Grazing Sky as well. Steve Miotti, last 5 years, turf routes in the SoCal circuit, 1 for 23, 32-cent ROI. Only 4 others hit the board. The other one that I think is going to take money is Richard's Boy, trying a route for the first time for Peter Miller, coming off of a nice win. Miller is 1 for 18 with none hitting the board aside from that winner. Past 5 years on turf with last out winners trying a route for the first time. I think that one's better sprinting. So yeah, Rocco's Wheel for me.
What do you think about price here, Matt? Where are we going to end up?
Here I am.
It was the guy out of the office, but it's not.
Here I am blowing up. I'm sorry.
It's the bat phone.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Gordon's calling.
Pete, go ahead. Canton, Ohio. I haven't played football in years.
You're not going to answer the call from Canton?
From the Hall of Fame. Pete, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Whenever you're ready, Matt.
Fire away.
I was just going to ask if you thought our fears were founded or unfounded about Rocco's Wheel getting bet down off the 6-1.
I think in a major way. I mean, everyone sees how hot D'Amato's barn is. There's also, for me, though, a bit of a concern that you look at the race. For a minute, I was intrigued with Chief of Staff, who ran second to Rocco's Wheel. But Dan brought up a good point when we went over this race on live just about an hour ago. You telling me that both Rocco's Wheel and Chief of Staff both ran their best race of their career, like and not by a little, by a ton on the same day, that, I don't know, makes you almost wonder, and I know the race has come back live and strong, but I can't help but be a little bit puzzled that you're telling me that just out of the blue, they both just relished going 2 turns, and it was enough to improve them, 12 to 15 points. I don't know, something to just keep in mind. But I think Rocco's wheel could easily go off the favorite in this spot.
Well, I hope you're wrong.
Yeah.
But again, this is a race that I just, boy, Zinvor, I guess he's all right. He can win. Paul Marak, I've never loved him. I think he's okay. I think he's better on dirt than he is on grass. It's just a race that just does nothing for me.
Did you notice the debut for Chief of Staff?
Chief of Staff's debut at Emerald Downs against Prime Engine.
Yeah.
Prime Engine came back to beat Track Attacker and then get absolutely walloped. What race was he in?
He was in the Delta Jackpot.
Delta Jackpot.
It hasn't been seen since.
Well,
I think. And it's interesting that Hollendorfer got Prime Engine and got Chief of Staff immediately out of that race.
Yeah.
So,
food for thought.
Food for thought.
Those are the 4 PH races for the weekend, Pete. I thought all in all this went reasonably well. If we can get some sort of visual for you next time that you can see us, that would be good.
I've got you in the little corner of the screen there. Can you not see that I can see you?
Yeah, I can. I think we're seeing what you're seeing.
Can you see us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, perfect. All right.
And like halfway through, it popped up, so we can do a little more communicating about whose turn it is to talk. That kind of thing.
I was going to say,
which is so intuitive in the room.
Throw it to you.
Yeah.
This is good. All right, so we'll be back next week. We'll be back on Tuesday. I think that's the plan.
Tuesday.
We'll do Tuesday. This, again, it's the middle week of the 3-week gap between Preakness and Belmont, so we'll talk about some more Belmont Stakes stuff. We had a couple of potential runners that worked this morning. Frosted worked, Materiality worked. We'll talk about all that stuff on Tuesday. Until then, Pete, take it away.
May you win all your photos.